Hey guys, welcome back to How to Roll Dice. I'm Josh, and today I just wanted to do a little bit of a channel update to provide you guys with some information as to where I've been for the last 2 weeks and what I have planned going forward. First off, sorry for the delay, but getting right into why it was delayed. About 2 weeks ago, I was wrapping up my review for the Renegade Game Studios game Fuse. Fuse is a nice little fast-action, high-speed, thrilling dice game where a group of players working together are trying to defuse a series of bombs in order to stop their ship from exploding. It's a good game. I like it. But I felt like while I was sort of delivering my thoughts on the game, they felt a little, not mean, but almost forced, like I was trying to pull an opinion out of a lack of experience with the game, like I hadn't played it enough, or I hadn't played it with enough different people, or maybe I hadn't watched it played enough. I've had some groups sit down and play it and just observe their experience with it as an outsider, which are things that I like to do with a game before I can deliver my honest opinion on it. And it made me sort of pause and think, okay, maybe I need to give this game some more time. Have I given other games enough time? And am I pushing reviews out at a rate that is premature or forcing premature opinions on games? Now, after thinking about it for a bit, I came to the conclusion that I haven't been doing that, which I'm happy about. I really gave it some thought. And I think because I've been reviewing a lot of games that are sort of in my back catalog, what's behind me, or what's over here, games that I've owned for a while, games that I've already been playing for 6 months to 6 years, I've had tons of time to sort of observe them and to play through them and to play them with different groups and to look at them from different angles and to form my opinion on them. And for the most part, those are the games that I've been delivering to you guys via reviews. However, I have been picking up games at a quicker rate now. I buy 1 or 2 a month just to make sure that I don't run out of games to learn and to experience and to share with you. And I've also been, I've been sent a few games from game developers and game designers, which I am immensely thankful for. And I feel like I need to be able to give those games the same amount of time, the same amount of play and sort of experience so that I can develop the same level of opinion, a real honest, well thought out opinion with you guys. And so I put a pause on that Fuse review, and I started working on getting together more gaming groups or gaming experiences throughout the course of a week. When COVID started, I sort of lost my ability to host my 2 or 3 nights a week gaming friends. Normally you'd have them come over just on a whim. Hey, is anybody doing anything? You want to come by, play a game? That all went away with COVID, obviously, as I'm sure with many other aspects of life and many other people it did. However, that really puts a dent in my ability to experience or experiment with a new game. So about 2 months ago, I got together with a group of neighbors, close friends that happen to live nearby, and I said, hey, do you guys want to try a game night? I know none of you really play games, it's kind of new to you, but I feel like it's something you'd like. They're all, math brain, engineer brain type people, and I've found that people like that tend to like board games, especially complex board games, once they can start to wrap their minds around the mechanics and the systems of it. And they said, yeah, sounds great. So we started doing a Sunday evening board game night, and there's 3 or 4 of them. They would come by. And at first I also had a couple of my siblings in there, but they're actually busy nowadays, so they're back out. So we have a nice little solid group of 4 or 5 players. And on a weekly basis, I would pop out a game, I would teach them the game, and we would play through it. And it's been great. I love teaching games. I love being able to share the experience of gaming with people that have never had it before. And I love seeing sort of people start to work through things on their own and start to develop techniques as they understand how the game works, and they develop tactics and strategies, and I can see that they're really getting it. I even love running games when I'm not in the game. I love just teaching a group of people and then sort of circling around the table, answering questions, giving tips where they're necessary, and watching a group of people get into the game on their own. Absolutely love that. However, only having 1 game night a week during which we can only play 1 game, and that's a learning game, makes it very difficult for me to get a good feel for a game if I haven't played it a lot before myself. So I'd put a game down, maybe I haven't played it at all, maybe I've only played it once or twice, or I haven't played it for several months or a year or so. And I'd put the game down, I'd refresh myself on the rules, make sure that I understood it. I'd teach the game to them, and then we'd play through the game. And sometimes we wouldn't even get to finish the game. Sometimes we'd only get 3/4 of the way through the game, and then we'd sort of run out of time. That happens with longer games, but obviously, normally you would have a chance to pick it back up the next day or play again next week and try to push a little further now that everybody knows the rules. But with this group, because I'm trying to keep them entertained, I don't want to have them playing the same game week after week after week. So I keep switching the game up, which they've enjoyed. But for me, trying to understand these games and experiment with these games and learn them so that I can give a good review on them once I form my opinion, I wasn't getting the level of information that I needed. I really want to watch a group play a game. I want to watch a group of beginners play the game. I want to watch a group of experienced players play the game. I want to play the game a bit. I also want to observe the game being played a bit. I want to take the game out of the box and put the game back into the box a dozen or so times at least before I can get a feel for, do I like the packaging? Do I like the way this thing stores? Is it obnoxious to set up? Is it time consuming? Or once you get a feel for it, does it go faster? Do I need to buy some additional storage components for this game the way that it comes? Are people enjoying the game? Is it hard to finish? Is it hard to teach? All of those things I want to be able to sort of weigh in on. And with the level and the amount of play that I was getting, I wasn't really developing the knowledge base to create those opinions, to form those opinions, and then I can't really give you an honest review. And so I started working on putting together some more play groups, and I was successful in doing that over the last 2 or 3 weeks. So now I have my Sunday night group, which is a group of friends that happen to be neighbors that come on by on Sundays, and I'm usually teaching them a game that they've never seen before. They're completely new to gaming, so they've probably seen about a dozen or so games at this point. I'm teaching them a game that either I have played before or that I'm playing for the first time myself, and we go through a single game of it, and we usually only do one game. We don't repeat games. I think we're going to start trying to do a game 2 weeks in a row. So, for example, this past weekend we played Wingspan for the first time. First time for myself as well. I've since played it numerous times. And on the next, this coming Sunday, we're going to play Wingspan again. So every game will get played twice. So the first game will be the learning game. The second game will be the, okay, now we all have the basics. Let's give this an honest go with a group of newer players. Then on Friday nights, I have a group of old friends that I've known for many years who are very experienced gamers, huge board game fans. They role play, they play tabletop miniatures games, as do I. I've known them since I was young, since they were very young. And they come over on Friday nights and they are very strategic, they're very tactical players, they're very competitive, and we go through the same games. I'm going to try to play the same games with all of my groups so that simultaneously I'm getting tons of different types of information about the same game. I'm getting a lot of different views and different angles on the same game. So that's Friday nights. And then on Mondays, I'm also beginning to trickle in a group who is a beginner group, but a group who sort of has some gaming experience. They might play console games, they might play PC games, so they're familiar with some themes and with some genres, but they've never actually seen it implemented on a tabletop. And so that's almost a bit of a middle zone there. They're not completely new to gaming, they're not experienced with tabletop games, they're in that middle zone. That group is a little wishy-washy right now because that's actually a group that was put together by my wife for her to have some time with some of her cousins and some of her relatives where they were just going to hang out and watch TV on Monday nights. But there have been a few nights where their programming just wasn't on when they thought it was going to be. They got the times wrong, or a football game popped in and screwed up the timing of the show. And so they had nothing to do. And I was there to say, hey, does anybody want to try a board game? And the few times that we have done that, everybody loved it. And I was like, wow, we could really, this is a great thing to capitalize on. This is a really unique group. I don't want to steal my wife's night, obviously. That was for her to hang out with her friends and family. But at the same time, everybody seems super into it. My wife likes games as well. And the show that they were all getting together to watch on television is actually ending soon. It's ending in about 3 or 4 weeks. So once that's done, we could full-time switch that group to gaming on Mondays. So that would be 3 separate gaming groups of 3 separate levels of experience with gaming every week, playing the same game, possibly for 2 weeks in a row. So that's plenty of experience for me. I get to teach the game a bunch, I get to play the game a bunch, I get to watch the game being played a bunch, and I get feedback from experienced players, newer players, and a few that are right in the middle. So that works out really well for me, and it's going to allow me to give you guys better, more opinionated, or more informed reviews on games. Now, moving on to the reviews themselves, and the reason that I have Raiders of the North Sea right here is because this is one of the most recent games, if not the most recent game that I've reviewed. I can't quite recall. I wanted to have less of a vague actual review, sort of a final result that I give you guys. Generally, I'll end a review by saying, I liked it, I didn't like it. I don't think there's been a game yet that I really said I didn't like it, but I'll say I like it, here's why I like it, here are some issues with it, here are some reasons you might not like it, but I would still recommend you give it a try. If there's ever a game where there's a huge sort of barrier to somebody trying it. Maybe it's hard to find, maybe it's super expensive, maybe it requires a high number of players, like Game of Thrones, for example, the second edition game, I believe requires a minimum of 5 players for the game to really function. And then there are other games out there that maybe only play 2 players, 3 players, so they're not good if you have larger groups. I try to relay that information to you guys, but I don't really give you a solid, here's the score, here's why, here's the exact reason I'm rating it this way, broken down over the various ways that you could rate a game. And I'm a bit of an analytical, logical person, and I like being able to assign a value or a number or a stat to something, just so it makes it easier to go back and look at and go, oh, I see, he really liked this game because of this, this, and that, but he kind of gave it a lower rating on this and this. I really highly value those 2 last things, so maybe this isn't a game for me. In going over that sort of in my head, I developed a little bit of a rating system, and I wanted to share that with you now. So I'm going to go ahead and pop it on the screen right here, hopefully, if I'm doing this correctly, game things. And the different sort of categories that I'm going to be rating games on from now on, and I'm going to use this in every video, would be theme and immersion. That's how well the theme of the game is sort of painted over the various components, the board, the little bits, the wooden pieces, and the metal tokens, and the coins, and the plastic, and the resin, and the miniatures, and what have you, as well as player boards, and even the rule book and the box. How well is the whole thing incorporated around the theme? And through that, how immersed do you become in the game when you play it? Are you just playing cards from your hand? Are you just grabbing coins to buy tokens to stick them on the board? Or are you placing warriors on a map that are expanding into enemy territory so that they can feud because the king's crown is on the line? And is that how you feel when you play the game? Or are you kind of disconnected from that? And it's just like, oh yeah, I get it, the board's painted to look like a Viking ship, and my miniatures have little hats, okay, I get it, they're Vikings. Is it enough to suck you in and really get you into the game? Or is it just bits on a board? Some games feel like that, and that's fine. For example, when I'm playing chess is a very abstract style game. There isn't much of a theme to it, but you can see it's kind of warring army versus warring army. That's the basic of it, right? I don't feel like that when I'm playing chess. Granted, I don't play chess that often, but I don't feel like my knight is charging across a field to assault a bishop who's on the other side, summoning rituals from a... That's not what the game is meant to be. It's abstract. You're disassociated. They're just pieces, and the pieces are shaped a different way and given different names so that you can remember that they have different movement mechanics on a very vanilla board. That's it. So, theme and immersion. How well does a game represent its theme, and how immersed do you become in the game through that theme? Then we've got cost versus quality. I was originally just simply going to do production quality and then cost as 2 separate categories, but I really feel like they need to be weighed against each other. This came up recently while playing the game Innis, which hopefully I'll be reviewing pretty soon. I absolutely love the game, with a group of friends, my experienced group of players. One of them mentioned, this game looks a little overproduced. For example, everybody has 12 miniatures that they use to place their clans around the board to represent where they are currently holding chieftain positions and high volumes of power. And one player mentioned, it's nice that these are, well crafted little resin miniatures, and every player has 12 of them, and it's not even the same for all of them. There's 5 or 6 different sculpts out of the 12 for every different player, and each set is in a different color to represent that player's color on the board. That's great and all, but couldn't these just be wooden cubes? If the sculpt doesn't matter, and they all simply represent a clan, couldn't they just be wooden cubes? And I said, yeah, you're right, and that would probably have reduced the cost of making the game, but would it have been as elegant, or as beautiful to look at, or as immersive if they were just cubes on a board? That's one of the directions that you can take away from immersion, in my opinion. Now that's going to cost more. Obviously, that game is going to cost more to produce, and it's going to cost more for us to buy. But is it worth it? Is that additional detail worth it for you to enjoy the game that much more? Is it worth 10 or 15 extra dollars on the box price? For example, this same game, Innis, the map expands as you explore in the game. You actually add map tiles and add new territories to the board. Those tiles, instead of being squares or hexagons, which has become relatively common, are actually a jagged triangular shape. When at first you look at them, it doesn't even seem like they could fit together, but they actually snap together just like puzzle pieces at almost any angle. It's very impressive that they actually figured out a way. I'm sure somebody in 3D design on a PC figured out how to snap those all together like that, but just looking at them, they look like a bunch of jagged, ragged edges, and you think, how would those ever fit together? And then when you go to place one, they actually line up perfectly no matter where you place them. It's kind of impressive. Do they need to be that way? Couldn't they just be triangles? Couldn't they have just been squares or hexagons? Sure. But the fact that they are this jagged, natural-looking edge that somehow fits together is really interesting and really adds a layer of uniqueness to the layout of the game. So that has to do with the production quality. And of course you weigh that against the cost. Innis, if you look up the price online, is a $160 board game. That's a lot for a board game. That's up there. That's I would say that's top bracket pricing for a board game. However, like I said, tons of miniatures, all varying sculpts, different colors, lots of different components to the game. The tiles that lay out the board are very unique, very large. Everything is fully colored, beautifully illustrated. All of the decks that you play from, the various types of cards, they're not standard size playing cards, they're tarot size cards, so they're about 2 times the size of standard playing cards. When you're holding a hand of those or you're laying them down on the table in front of you, it just allows you to appreciate the art and the design and the borders on the cards that much more. I could see you arguing that $160 is too much for a game, but I'd find it hard to argue that $160 is too much for what comes in that box and for what that game looks like when it's laid out on a table. It makes the game that much more immersive and that much more enjoyable, in my opinion. So there's your cost versus quality. Then we've got ease of use. This is how difficult is it to set up a game? How difficult is it to store and sort of remove from the box a game and all of its components? And how difficult is it to manipulate the components of the game in order to play the game? There are some games that I've put on the shelf that I will probably never take off again, even though I've made an honest effort to make them as easy to use, set up, and play as possible, because they are simply just overwrought with pieces and components and complexities in the setup and gameplay that I refuse to deal with them. Mansions of Madness First Edition is a great example of this. I know they've come out with a second edition since then. I'm hoping they streamlined a lot of this, but Mansions of Madness First Edition required me to go out and buy 2 additional jeweler trays that hold various components. There's so much that it doesn't even fit back in the box, no matter how I try to store it. And every time I take the game out and reread how to set it up, set up all the components, hand out all the various cards and components to different players, it is an absolute mess of stuff just strewn across the table, most of which we end up not even using. The stuff that we are supposed to use, we're sort of hesitant to use because every time you utilize one piece, it triggers 9 other pieces that have to be picked up or found or organized or flipped over or put in this pile. It's just kind of a mess. And it's a hassle. We often joke about, do you want to play Mansions of Madness? I don't know. I don't have the 3 hours it takes to set up and the 15 minutes to play. It's just too much. The game needs to be streamlined, it needs to be organized, it needs to be done better, or else it's not worth playing. And it's a great game, and well, it's got its flaws, I'll say that. It's way too easy for the DM or the GM, whatever you want to call the character. I think in the game it's actually called like the Overlord, to kill the players. Way too easy. You can just knock them at the drop of a hat. So it's got flaws, but it's a good game, and it's Lovecraft based. I love H.P. Lovecraft, one of my favorite writers, one of my favorite genres of game. And I will not play that game because it is not easy enough to play. It's not easy to use. So there's that. Then we've got the last 2 categories, for me, arguably some of the most important stuff here. Is the game enjoyable? Do people that play the game enjoy playing the game, or are people getting frustrated by the end of it? Does it take too long in between turns? Do people get annoyed with how easily it is to gang up on somebody? Does the game encourage ganging up on somebody? We don't play Munchkin anymore, even though I own 2 copies of it, Basic and Cthulhu, and I have several friends that own many copies of it, because the game pretty much encourages everybody to gang up on whoever's winning. So you feel punished for doing well, and it makes the game last a long time, and it pretty much annoys everyone at the table so that by the time the game's done, no one is friends anymore. And that's just not good. So, is the game enjoyable? Can you sit down and have a good time? Are you walking away from the table at the end with a smile on your face? Do you want to immediately play another game of it? Giant truck going by outside my window, I apologize. Do you immediately want to play another game of it as soon as you're done? That's an enjoyable game, and it doesn't mean that it's a complex game, and it doesn't mean that it's a heavily tactical game. It could be a simple game. It could be a long, drawn-out 6-hour game, or it could last 20 minutes. If you have a good time playing it, it's enjoyable. And then lastly, is it teachable? Now again, this is a category that I was originally going to go with something like complexity, or how crunchy versus how fluffy are the rules, meaning how complex and intricate are the actual mechanisms that make the game work versus how much lore and backstory is to the theme of the game. And I decided that that's not necessarily what bothers me. A game can be complex, and that's fine. A game can be, very, very straightforward and streamlined and simple to learn. That's fine too. The point is, are you able to get a group of people, whether they be experienced or not, to understand the game in a single playing, or maybe in 2 playthroughs? If a game is so complex that even after having played through an entire game, you're still kind of scratching your head at the end, like, I don't know if we even did half of that right. I feel like we had a lot of questions. There weren't answers in the rule books. I think we screwed half a dozen of the rules up. Maybe we should play it again and see if it gets any clearer, and then you play it a second time and everybody's still kind of going, how does this work? This seems to contradict with that. Why would I ever take this option? I don't understand. That doesn't make any sense. If that's the way the game is designed, and it might just be because the rules are written poorly, or it might be that the overall game design is just unnecessarily complex, that's not a very teachable game. And if a game isn't teachable, it doesn't necessarily mean not teachable to new players. If a game isn't one that you can wrap your head around and understand without a ton of effort and constant rulebook references, then it's not a great game, because that's going to constantly interrupt your ability to enjoy the game and to play the game and to feel like you know what you're doing. And that's detrimental, whether you're an experienced player or you're a new player. If you don't feel like you know what you're doing, you're never going to be able to enjoy the game. You're just going to feel lost and confused. You're going to feel like everybody else is having a better time than you are. And that's not a good feeling to have. That's not a feeling you want your gamers to have. It's not a feeling you want to have. So, is a game teachable, right? So we've got theme and immersion, we've got cost versus quality, we've got ease of use, we've got the enjoyable rating of the game, and we've got the teachable rating of the game. Each of those are going to be assigned a score from 0 to 2, with 2 being best and 0 being worst. Your average game is going to be a 1. If a game is above average, better than usual, one that I would recommend purely based off of that score, it's going to be a 2. If a game is below average, or that is something that I would see as unplayable purely because of this score, I would rate it at a 0. If a game ends up with a score of 5, it's basically average. If a game starts to tilt towards 10, it's better than average. If it reaches 10, it's basically perfect. If the score starts to dip down towards 0, below 5, it's got some serious issues. And if it ever reaches 0, which I firmly can't imagine, but if a game ever reached 0, I would basically promise you that if you buy the game, you are going to want your money back almost instantly. Again, I find that hard to believe that a game would ever sort of be at that level, but it's possible. I mean, hell, I couldn't even give a deck of playing cards a 0. Right? So, anywho, this is what I've been working on, playing more games with more people more often, and developing a rating system that I can use to better convey my opinions in a more detailed way to you guys. I apologize for the delay. This video will hopefully be going up today when I film it, which is Friday, and I will hopefully have another review for you at the beginning of next week. I don't think it's going to be Fuse. I think it might be Innis. It may also be Wingspan. I'm not certain. It may also be Raiders of the North Sea. Oh, whole reason I had this here, real quick before I end the review. This is what I wanted to do a little example of my rating system on. So, theme and immersion, I would give this a 1. The game fully displays the theme of the game throughout its components and its board, but I don't really feel immersed in the game while I'm playing the game. I don't start speaking in a funny Viking voice. I don't really enact the actions that I'm taking, so it doesn't fully draw me in, but it certainly does utilize the theme across its box, its components, its board, all of its cards. You can tell you're playing a Viking game. It feels like you're placing workers to either raid or to produce goods. The theme is there, it's just not fully immersive, so I'd give this a 1. Cost versus quality, this is a $45 game that comes with tons of wooden and metal and plastic and cardboard components. It is absolutely worth the money, and the design of everything is very fitting to the game. So that's a 2 on cost versus quality. For $45, I would find it hard to find a game that is better and more inclusive than this one. I mean, you get fully metal, like rune carved coins for your actual money in the game. Usually that's a really high-end thing, or like a Kickstarter expansion. Then, ease of use. The game is pretty easy to set up, however, I do find that everything sort of gets stored in the one bag and then has to be separated out, and then some of it put back in, then you have to randomize your plunder, put your plunder out on the board. If you've got a couple people working together, it's only about a 5 to 10 minute setup. If you're doing it on your own, it's a little bit longer, and that can be a bit much. It's not that bad though, so I would give this a 1 on usability, or ease of use. Enjoyable? It's a very enjoyable game. I have a lot of fun playing it. I haven't ever seen anybody get frustrated at it, because it's more of a Euro game than an American style game, which means you're not directly attacking each other, you're not directly sort of defending against your opponent. It's more of a passive thing. You're putting workers out on the board. You might take a space that another player was going to use, but they're probably going to find an alternative that's just as good, and if not, on their next turn, they'll probably be able to do what they were going to do this turn. And you move around the table so fast that from one turn to the next, there's not a lot of waiting. So as far as enjoyability, I would say it's right up there. Never seen anybody not have a good time with this game. And then teachable, absolutely teachable. I've played this game with 2 different groups of players and both of them got it right away. Very simple mechanic. You're gonna place a worker, you're gonna pick up a worker. When you place a worker, you take the action that you placed it on. When you pick up a worker, you're gonna take the action that you took it off of. That's it. If you're raiding, you're gonna place a worker on the raid location. You're gonna see if you succeeded at the raid, you're gonna pick up the loot, and then you're gonna pick up the worker that was already there when you placed your first worker. So you're trading a worker for a worker. That's it. It's place a worker, pick up a worker, that's your whole turn. Most of the mechanisms that you can use in the rest of the game are pretty straightforward and not that hard to follow. So, quick review here on the ratings. Theme and immersion, we've got a 1. Cost versus quality, we've got a 2, we're up to 3 now. Ease of use, we've got a 1, we're up to 4 now. Enjoyable, we've got a 2, and teachable, we've got a 2. So we have a score of 8 on Raiders of the North Sea. It is above average. I like it, I would recommend it. So, before I run out of video time here, I hope you guys have enjoyed this little update. I'm sorry for the delay. I will be back shortly with a proper game review. Not sure what it's gonna be on, but it's gonna be something good. And I hope you like this new system. I hope you liked this video. If you have a chance, go down below and subscribe, set your notification bell to all, leave a comment, a like, or a dislike, and I'll get back to you if I can. And have a good day. I'll see you later.